Hi there. In this short video, we are going to have a look at how your company can use Silico to forecast your future margin and optimize and improve it. You see the overview of a model we've created for a company in the chemicals industry on the screen now. That company had 3 questions for us. Firstly, what is their future margin going to be under different circumstances? Secondly, should they make or buy certain materials to optimize their margin? And thirdly, how can they use pricing and contracting to optimize their margin? And particularly with this last question, they could see an improvement of up to 7% in revenue from specific customers. And we can build you a tailored model that is suited to your needs as part of a 4-week pilot too, and answer similar questions for your company. And to answer questions like that, we are going to use our dashboards here. Dashboards are our interactive tool for decision makers to investigate how key inputs on the left here impact critical outputs on the right here in real time. And in our case, we actually have 2 outputs visualized on this chart. The green line is the company's margin if they buy all of their raw materials, whereas the blue line is their margin if they make some of their raw materials themselves. And using the chart, we can identify that the blue margin is higher and superior, and we should therefore make materials where we can rather than buying them. And that would generate a roughly 10% increase in margin. But we might want to investigate what are these margins actually going to be under different input conditions, and does our make or buy decision change if those input conditions change. So for example, we could activate this input for energy prices, which have risen over this year specifically. And we could assume, for example, that until the end of the year, energy prices move from their base level where they are in the model now to an additional £3 per unit of product that we're producing. And as I move the slider here, you can identify the charts adjust in real time, and we can now see that our margin has dropped slightly. Or we could make different assumptions and, for example, think about what if energy prices actually peak maybe in the second half or about halfway through the year, and then they drop again. And we can very easily reflect our assumptions of input conditions here on the left and see how they impact our margin. And in this case, with higher energy prices, we have a small drop in them. But overall, energy prices do not seem to be very causing a lot of havoc for our margin. That might change with the next input though. So for example, here we have got the market price for carbon fiber, which may be one of the inputs that we need in our production process. And we could think about what happens if carbon fiber prices are going to be higher or lower than the base estimate that we have in the model. So for example, if they are higher and they rise over the year, we see a very quick and very steep decline in our margin over the coming months. However, if they are lower than we expect them generally to be, we see an increase in our margin, and there's even a point now where we might be indifferent between making or buying raw materials. However, if they drop further, due to context structures for example, it might then be superior to buy raw materials rather than make them ourselves. In addition to margin forecasting and make or buy decisions, we also want to have a look at how a company can use contracting and pricing to optimize their margin further. And for that, we set 2 additional scenarios up that reflect different pricing structures. And these scenarios reflect what we've seen in the chemicals industry, which is that companies do not just specify a fixed amount per unit of product that is paid for each unit of product by customer, but rather have some fixed amount and some sensitivity to market prices. And thereby a producer can pass increasing market prices onto customers, but also lowering the prices, market prices for commodities decrease. And we set these pricing formulas up in a way that initially, with our base case assumption in the model, they are roughly equal, so that a customer is incentivized to actually go for these pricing structures. But we can now investigate what happens if commodity prices, for example, our carbon fiber price, changes from our base case assumption. And then we can, for example, decrease it, and we can see our base case with the blue line here just assuming a fixed amount specified in the contract is now superior, because we have declining material prices as our expenses, but still have the same amount of revenue coming in from customers. On the other hand, if the opposite happens and we have rising commodity prices compared to our base case assumptions, we have a falling margin where the contract that provides the highest sensitivity to these commodity prices, which is the green one, has a higher margin. And we can use that to actually quantify, okay, but how much superior are these different pricing structures? And for example, with a roughly 25% increase above the base case assumption in our model in commodity prices, we have an additional £200,000 in revenue found. And that's the sort of question we can also answer for your company as sort of a 4-week pilot where you rebuild you a custom model that is suited and tailored to your specific needs and your specific questions.